Welcome, friends, to the Pioneers of the Independent Networks. I'm your host, Ricky Blues. This is your co-host, Lord Timothy Walker. And we're joined again this week by a very special co-host, good friend, Jeff Capo. Jeff, thank you for coming back.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me again. Looking forward to this week's episode.
This is going to be a little bit different. This week we're going to give you a topic that's rarely ever talked about, but something that we really need to discuss. But before we get there, let me give them the obligatory, and friends, if you've joined us in the past, you know that we bring you all the characters, the matches, the promotions, the people that populated the Mid-Atlantic independent wrestling scene from the 1970s to today.
We should just tape that and put it in every episode.
Yeah, but I like changing it up because, you know, I never do it exactly the same. Sometimes I add, like, maybe, you know, feuds, or I add this or that.
You changed the time frame a little bit too, because originally you were starting like in the 80s.
Yes.
And then now you've bumped it back to the 70s.
See, so, you know, it constantly changes, Tim. We're all about that evolution. Never staying stagnant, always striving forward. So, thinking about moving forward, Tim, where will we be moving forward from today?
Well, today, I think we'll be right in the center of the ring, under the lights, with a microphone in our hand.
Well, that takes us to the topic's title. What topic will we be talking about?
Let's talk about ring announcers today.
The role of the ring announcer. That's an interesting thing. Have you ever heard anyone address it, talk about it, MC it?
Not very often.
But we are going to tackle that very topic today. So, folks, strap in. Here we go. And what better person than to have a former referee, a former behind-the-scenes guy, and a current and all-around wrestling historian like you, Jeff, to kind of bridge that gap so people understand. Because when I look at the ring announcer has to work part and parsons, first and foremost, with someone that was in a position when you, where you were in the NWA and the
Sure.
ECW and Win and all the places that you were, even in the MEWF you refed.
Sure. And I also did ring announcing. I have ring announced several shows.
And so you have that experience. So I would look at, first and foremost, your knowledge and your ability to work symbiotic with a ring announcer to explain that behind the scenes.
Sure. Well, obviously, the ring announcer is usually the first person that the fans hear, because they come in, they get ready, they sit down, they get ready to go. House lights go down, ring light goes up. The ring announcer's right there. So the ring announcer does a couple different things. He's there for he or she is there for informational purposes, because again, especially on an independent show, you may not know all the players involved. You may not know the matches that are involved. What are the stipulations? How many, is it a title match? What's going on? Just basic information that's going out there. You also, as a ring announcer, you want to set a good tone for the card. So again, as a ring announcer, you need to be well-spoken. You need to be clear in what you're doing. You need to be a little bit of a cheerleader, so to speak. You want to try to get the crowd a little going. So a lot of times the ring announcer will come out and say, oh, we're here at the Teamsters Hall today, here in Parkville. How's Parkville doing today? Trying to get people, oh, okay, that's not good enough. Come on, let's hear it.
To get them to invest.
Right, get them to invest, get them ready to get going for the show.
Jeff, is that a precursor for really educating the audience on giving them, the way I would look at it, as cues as to, here's when you know you need to cheer, here's when you know you need to boo? Because it's kind of a ride.
Somewhat, and you want to get them, you want to get the crowd ready for the show to even just start. Because again, they've been sitting there for a little bit, they're ready to go. You want to get them fired up, you want them having them cheer, especially right at the beginning. Because you want to set that tone. You don't want them sitting on their hands. You don't want crickets as the people are coming out to get the show started. So you definitely want to get them involved, invested into the show. Again, try to get them information onto what's going on. So again, the information as you're reading off usually a cue card or a sheet to let them know who's coming out, weight, height, Are they from the infamous Parts Unknown?
Right.
What match is it? What's the involvement in the match? Is it a one fall? Is it two out of three? What is the stipulations? Is it for a title belt? Is it what's going on here? So you're telling the story.
So Jeff, you really said the magic phrase there when you gave that presentation, the narrator of the story. Mm-hmm. And Tim, we've talked about plenty of times in the past where a wrestling event is like chapters in a book. Maybe your first match is your first chapter, but you have to have, like Jeff is saying, a narrator to bring them along. Is that the responsibility of the ring announcer?
I think so. I think one of the most important things that Jeff brought up there was explaining the rules of the match. I can remember after a triple threat match, one of the fans coming up to me and tapping me on the shoulder and asking me, why did that wrestler keep trying to pull the other wrestler off when he was making a pin? Obviously, she didn't understand the rules of the match, and it was never explained by the ring announcer what the rules were, and therefore, she had no idea how to react to what was going on. So she just sat there, blankly staring at the ring.
So, for that vein specifically, it's important for the ring announcer, even though this might be their 3,000th time saying this exact spiel of what this stipulation is, every time that you go to a new venue, you've got to repeat that process. It's not just I say it once and refer to the rules, right? I said it two events ago, but if that specific thing is on that card that night, like a battle royal, you have to lay the groundwork before the battle royal unfolds. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you lose people.
Well, you have to understand, you sometimes have casual fans that are coming out to the show for the first time. Mm-hmm. And if you don't explain what's going to happen or how the rules are, they're not going to understand, and they're not going to enjoy the match like they should, and they're not going to be able to react like they should. And the fact that a triple threat match has different rules from promotion to promotion is also something that can cause some confusion. Sometimes those are one fall matches, sometimes they're elimination matches.
Mm-hmm. So there is a big responsibility at the onset for the ring announcer. He's not just, or she's not just, an arbitrary position. Right. This is a very important position.
If you're going to have a match that's going to go to a 20-minute Broadway, and the ring announcer doesn't explain that there's a 20-minute time limit in the match, what sense does that make?
Right.
If you're watching it, you're not going to get what's going on. Why is the bell ringing after so long? I don't understand why this is happening. But if you clearly explain the premise of the match and the rules, then people can become fully invested and understand what's going on. I think that's a big role that the ring announcer plays.
And to follow up on Tim's point, if you're doing a time limit, then it's the ring announcer is usually the one calling the times during the match. Mm-hmm. So, because not everybody's sitting there with a stopwatch doing the match. So if they'll say 10 minutes have gone by, 10 minutes are left in the match, then you got a sense of the timing as to what's going on or what's happening. Or even if it's like an Iron Man match where there's multiple pinfalls going on, then they say, oh, well, wrestler A has 3 pinfalls and wrestler B now only has 2 pinfalls. And again, you're bringing the audience along with you for that story to tell the story, but you have to give them the information that they're not privy to and make sure that they understand, hey, this is what's going on. Or, even at, like we say, a triple threat match. Was it for a title? Or is it for some title match in the future? There's a lot of variants that have to be explained and a lot of nuances to the matches that it's important for the ring announcer to make sure they do that. And then too, when it comes time to intermission, are they doing a meet and greet in the ring? Are there wrestlers available to do?
So they MC that next portion.
Right. Are the wrestlers going to be available to do pictures and autographs outside the ring or wherever it is? Or, hey, or they help the sponsors This match is being sponsored by Coca-Cola or whatever the sponsorship is.
So the ring announcer really is also a traffic cop, if you think about it.
Exactly.
They are directing the fans who are looking for instructions on how they can interact with the show, or with the event itself, like you're saying.
Right.
Okay? I'm sorry, Jeff. Keep going.
No, and like I said, and also, making general announcements. Oh, our next show will be whatever the date. We have tickets available. Please step over to the ticket booth if you'd like to get tickets for the next show. Things like that. There's just general information about what's going on. Again, because not everybody may have internet. Not everybody, and especially we didn't back in. We always talk about it back in the ancient days. We didn't have that, so it was important that that information got out to the fans, because even when we did the programs, the written programs, we may not have had the date set up by the time the program was printed, because we had to do it ahead of time. So it was important again for the ring announcer, because again, his or her voice was basically the only voice you were hearing over the sound system during that time, unless the promoter came out or they even introduced the promoter.
Right.
And say, Dick Karakoff has an announcement for you about our next show or whatever. Again, like you said, directing it, emceeing it, trying to get the fans to buy in to what's going on and keep them interested throughout the thing, because you don't want people just getting up and walking away and not having the information they need either for the next match or how long is intermission, when's the next show, what sponsors are here, who has their products maybe here that you can try out. All those type of things have to be done by the ring announcer, because again, they're usually the only voice that the people are going to hear, because even if somebody's doing play-by-play, you generally don't hear that over the house.
And that's that's an excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up, because that was the next topic I wanted to go to, Jeff. That is, a play-by-play for television is absolutely individual or separated from the ring announcer. They're not the same. They can't be. The ring announcer is addressing the people who are in attendance.
Right.
The commentators are providing play-by-play and color for the people who are watching by way of, whether it's live streamed, whether it's television. They're echoing similar roles, but they're not the same. They are completely separate.
And that you don't want to have over the house, because you don't want too much noise going on that it's distracting from people, because again, they may not understand what they're trying to portray as commentators or color announcers, that they're doing that type of thing. So again, and they may be announcing things that maybe it's not public information at that point. It will be once the broadcast goes up, but at that point you don't want to give it away. You're
not showing your hand.
Right.
Exactly. So that's another extremely important point. Commentators, both color and analyst, have to be separate from the ring announcer. It's very similar roles, but not connected, but not sharing.
Also, the ring announcer has a symbiotic relationship usually with the referees, because the referees also are passing information to them or guiding them along. And if there's changes, sometimes, especially, again, I go back then, not everybody had earpieces, not everybody did that type of thing. So as the referee, sometimes I would get information, I would be in the back, and I would say, oh, we got to do this match instead because somebody's running late, or we have to switch up a little bit. So I would go and say, okay, we're not doing match 3, we're doing match 4, then we're going to do match 3, so that they would change your notes a little bit and be able to move along with that, and make sure again that they, like we talked about the stipulations, make sure that he or she clearly explains
what that is,
the stipulations are for the match, so that again that the crowd was understanding of what's going on.
Well, and one of the important things that you're talking about is your communication with that ring announcer. You as a referee, especially is the area I'm going to go on for just a second. There, like you said, in the old days, we come up in the archaic times, right? We did the Iggy. We did the hand signs. We did the things that said, this is the go home. This is what you got. This is how much time's left. And that would be something that you would communicate and talk with the ring announcer in the back to make sure that you gave them the signs. You know, the old ear tug was 5 minutes left, or the swipe of the nose was the go home. Right, the fist was tighten it up.
Right.
You know, those
put
types of
the
things.
hands across the belt with the numbers of minutes, which the timekeeper was also involved in too.
Right.
But then even too, if the match ended, you know, if there was a change, I would have to explain to the ring announcer, this is what we're calling. And I go back to the Salkin Slam about the match we had, the title match with T. Ranchula and Glenn Osborne. Now at the end, T. Ranchula basically cheated to win the match. So I had to go down there and explain to them, okay, we're going to announce, I said, you need to announce that we're going to order an immediate rematch at a future card, because they showed me something on the video that showed that I missed his feet on the ropes or something like that. So again, it's that type of thing that they have to, you know, because we're constantly moving and shifting and things are going on that the ring announcer may not be entirely aware of at that point. But again, we want that information out because, again, we're continuing the storyline.
Right.
Or we want the people to understand the ending of the match, or what happened, and what, if there's consequences involved, and what's going on, or why it is the way it is, or whatever. So those are the type of things too that you know, as a referee, I had to be constantly in contact with the ring announcer to make sure that they got that point across.
When we're talking about rules inside the ring, I think it's also important that we discuss the rules outside of the ring. And the ring announcer plays a very important role in that. Mm-hmm. He describes what behavior is acceptable, such as there's no throwing of any objects toward the ring. There's no smoking in the building. He gives you an outline of what you can and cannot do as a fan at the matches. And I think it's a very important part of his job.
Well, in all honesty, the ring announcer is the custodian of that product at that time. If you think about it, they're the first person, like you said, Jeff, that they see, the fans see. They're the last person that they hear from. So if they don't have the authority there too in those tones and the information that they're delivering, then that show can go to hell in a handbasket very quick. They are the flagship for the promotion as much as the workers are themselves. And they are an in-ring talent, right?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
You know, we had guys like Larry Katz who did it. We've talked before about Joel Goodhart, who did it for independent
And
promotions.
he was a radio personality.
He was a radio personality. You know, again, when you have people like that involved, that's also, you know, sometimes, now, obviously Larry and Joel knew a lot about the business, but you may get somebody who is maybe a local personality from a TV or radio who doesn't do wrestling, so you have to guide them on how you want them to do something,
right.
Or this is the information that we want, you know, to give out. If you want to plug your show, whatever. Here's how we generally do ring announcing, and try to give them a kind of a crash course, so to speak, on how to do that. So again, we want them to look, they want them to feel comfortable, want them to make the audience feel comfortable that they're in there, and make sure that, you know, again, all of it is buy-in. You want the audience to buy into what you're doing. You know, you want them to be excited that there's a guest ring announcer. You know, you want, or they'll announce if there's a guest ring announcer, a guest timekeeper, or if there's somebody in the crowd, we would acknowledge someone being there. You know, those type of things. So again, it's all about setting that tone right from the start, right until the very end, and making sure that it's consistent, and making sure that it's beneficial for everyone, especially the brand.
Well, and that's exactly it. So that takes me to my next point. We've talked about all the things to tell them that they can do, but there's been times on cards where we've all been part of where we should have told ring announcers, don't do this, but it was done. There's some things that get done occasionally that I don't think is the ring announcer's job to do. A perfect example, Tim, you and I, we've had conversations. You want to talk about one of the things that we've talked about?
I've experienced this a lot over the years, where I've noticed that after a heel, like a T. Ranchula or a Max Thrasher, would win a match over his babyface opponent where the ring announcer would say, "Let's hear it for Jeff Hall."
Right.
And then you'd hear then you would hear a round of golf
Applause.
claps.
Right. Like a consolation prize.
Right. Participation
Yes.
trophy.
Right.
And I really don't care for that.
No, I'm of the same opinion. I look at it, the dynamic, as a worker. If I didn't get myself over as a baby face to when that heat, that hot end goes where it's a screw finish, we'll say, and if the fans aren't upset at the screw finish that the heel's gone over with that, then I didn't do my job as the baby face of getting the fans invested in the match. Whereas I need an ancillary consolation from the audience that's done through the actions of the ring announcer instead of my actions. That's when I know as a performer I failed. So even though that's the ring announcer doing that, that's the worker's fault. But the ring announcers bought into it and said, give them a round. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
And I think that confuses the audience.
It absolutely does.
Because then they're like, okay, the guy lost the match. All right, we got that. We got that as the audience. They get that part, but now you're muddling it by bringing them their name back up again. It's like,
Right.
Okay, announce who the winner is.
And then move
that's
through.
it. Then
Exactly.
move on to the next thing.
What else do you see that, in your experiences, has a ring announcer done where it was almost cringeworthy and you're saying, don't do that, don't go there, that's not your job?
I've seen ring announcers get more involved than they should have. And whether they decided to do it or whether a promotion decided to, for whatever reason, to try to pull an angle, and that goes back to the point you made about referees as well. There's a certain job that I feel that they should be doing, and the same for referees. Don't try and push beyond that too much, because let's be honest, the fans are not there to see you.
Right.
They're not.
Even though you're the storyteller.
Right. They're not there for you. They're there for the wrestlers to do the thing. So it's a fine line with
Yes.
that. But, I just feel that there's certain lines you don't cross, and you don't get involved in an angle. You don't get involved in a match. Again, if a wrestler comes out, if a heel wrestler comes out and he pushes the ring announcer down, that's different. But for the
Right, because that's usually a setup.
Right.
You know about that. You
right,
know it's
because they're trying to get that heel heat,
Right.
that he's just attacking anybody and everybody that's around him. That's fine, but don't have it where the referee cuts a promo, or the ring announcer cuts a promo. That's not their jobs to do that,
and we've seen that.
and we have, and it's a shame because again, it takes away from, in my opinion, it takes away from what the workers are trying to do, and like you said, trying to get themselves over, whether they win or lose. They're trying to get their characters, the match itself, and the brand over. So again, by muddling things and saying, "Oh my God, everybody and their brother's involved in this now," why?
Why? Exactly.
There's too many people involved in it. So you want to try to limit what you're doing. And again, I like ring announcers. I like ring announcers that have a gimmick.
I want to talk about that next too, Jeff.
Okay,
Go ahead.
But I like ring announcers that have a gimmick. That's fine. Again, keep it simple. Keep it within the confines of the card and what you're trying to do. Again, it's one of those positions, like referees, I shouldn't be trying to get myself over as a referee. I should be neutral. And to me, a ring announcer should be neutral as well. Timekeeper's the same way.
And that's what my question is. If you are a ring announcer, should you have a gimmick? And if the gimmick is there, you understand that it is a subtle gimmick. Here's a perfect example. For a referee, Dave the Wave had a gimmick.
Sure.
Right? Dave the Wave
Right.
did his gimmick.
Right.
And it was exactly what you just said. It was neutral. It made him not a face. It made him not a heel. But it made him authoritarian. And it also endeared him to the people.
Right.
Right? Dave would do his Dave the Wave deal prior to the match.
Right.
Okay? But then as the match would unfold, he would become very authoritarian to both sides. So gimmick, but it is a very contained gimmick.
Right.
Michael Buffer, right?
Right,
There's a ring announcer. He had a gimmick. His gimmick didn't detract from the wrestlers. His gimmick was his voice and the way that he phrased his phraseology in setting up the championship match. So I can accept a gimmick like that.
Right.
But not where a gimmick puts them.
It shouldn't be a continuing gimmick. Let's just say that. Let's just say you do your gimmick, you're done. Like
Your
Michael
shtick,
Buffer.
It's almost like a shtick.
Michael Buffer would say his phrase, and then he was done.
And that was done.
And you wouldn't hear it the rest of the time during,
Any other match, that was a
Sure.
championship match.
And there's several. There's a gentleman, and I know from the Carolinas and Georgia, named Brett Wolverton.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's an excellent ring announcer, and he does, when they do the main event, he stretches out the word main.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great, and the crowd loves it, but he only does it for the
For
main
that main event.
the main event. And again, it doesn't detract from the match. It doesn't, and everybody expects it. Everybody knows it's coming. He does it, and then he's done, and then he moves on.
It's within the confines of what his definition is, Tim.
And it's a gimmick. It's not a character.
Exactly, and that's the biggest thing that I think I looked at. I look at Al Albert. Mm-hmm. Al Albert had the greatest gimmick for entering that ring. He got people so up when he would come in with his little dancing and hand slapping, and he would bring them up. Al Albert did a great job with that. Had a good voice for
Sure.
it. So I can appreciate that, and I think that gives character not becoming a character.
And the fans connect a little bit with that when he's coming down to the ring and giving high fives and shaking hands and that sort of thing. I think that's a nice little connection.
He's
But
the
it's not
ambassador of the-
overdone.
Right, he's the ambassador of the brand. He is. So he's
You want him to be friendly and
Exactly.
you want him to be nice and you want him to be approachable, but you don't want him to be the product.
right.
And it sets that tone for the show. He comes out and does that thing right away, and he's getting people engaged, getting them involved, and then he moves on to do his ring announcing, and that's where it is. He's done his bit to get everybody moving, and then he moves on with the rest of the show.
So we've covered a large area, and we took a topic that our folks probably at the beginning said, might not be that interesting, and we've showed you just how incredible one little aspect of the professional wrestling game, the ring announcer, can be. So folks, we're thanking you for joining us. I'm thanking my very special co-host, Tim Walker, our very special guest and great friend, Jeff Capo, for joining us and providing the insight. We're hoping that you give us some commentary on how you felt about this episode. And we're also hoping that you join us next week as we take one more stroll down Concussion Lane and bring you a pioneer.